welcome to Middlesex Update. I'm Melissa Hurley. Glad you could join us today. And today we are here with Senator Jarrett Barrios. And Senator, the last time you were on the show, we had a little bit different title. It was candidate for a state senator or something to that effect, but you were a candidate, and it's nice to see you back with the official title now.
Thank you. And last time I think it was the middle of August, and I was a sweaty mess because I had just been door knocking.
Well,
and now it's
that's part of the campaign.
Almost summer, but it feels like winter, this crazy weather, and I'm honored you would have me. Also,
oh, great. No, we would definitely, we said in the program before, we wanted to have you come back and represent some of the cities and towns that Middlesex Update has played in, so I'm sure they all want to hear what their newest senator is doing.
Excellent, excellent. Well, the district is a big one. It starts off in Suffolk County. We have Alston and part of Brighton. Also include Charlestown there. But I do have a big piece of Cambridge, East Somerville, and Everett, all of Everett, a bit of all of Chelsea, a little bit of Revere, and some of Saugus. So it's a big, crazy district, and I'm actually very happy. Middlesex is the first one of the counties in the name, meaning there's mostly Middlesex County.
No, that's right.
It's the Middlesex, Suffolk, and Essex district,
exactly.
And it's a wonderful set of communities, and I'm honored to represent it. Thank you for having me today.
No, thank you for coming. And when we talked before, you had a very grassroots campaign. I think that's always been important to you, is talking to the people that actually go out and vote. As far as, you have the overall picture, but then the grassroots as well. And when I've spoken to some people on your staff, and you really have tried to include representatives from each one of your cities and towns.
Oh, my staff, you mean?
Right.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Right.
We've got somebody from Chelsea, somebody from Revere. I had somebody from Somerville who just left the office. Cambridge, of course. I have somebody from Saugus, but who now lives in Everett, and somebody else from Everett. So, yeah, we're a real cross-section, and I think that's important. Because when you call your senator's office and when you have such different communities, you really want to have a sense that there's somebody there who understands your community and your set of issues. That's not to say every issue is community specific, but some folks, especially senior citizens, want to feel like they're going to be heard by somebody who is going to understand. And that's a big part of really what representation is, isn't it, after all? It's sort of giving people the sense that they're being heard, and then reflecting what you hear in them in your agenda.
And since you've been state senator, do you find yourself still in the neighborhoods? Are you going to the local meetings? Or, I mean, I know that your job isn't just on Beacon Hill.
Let me give you a sense of a typical day. Today, for example, I had a breakfast meeting with a neighborhood organization in Chelsea. I was at the Everett High School graduation. I spoke to a group of Revere teachers last night. I'm going from here to an awards banquet in Alston, and then of course Cambridge. I have a series of meetings tomorrow in Cambridge. Oh, very, very grassroots. That's important. Again,
Do you ever sleep?
I don't sleep. I'm giving that up.
I'm starting to wonder. I remember your campaign literature. You're out running at 6
running at 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Well,
excuse me.
I am an early bird. I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. But I'm usually in bed by 10. There's something very, I think, important to, in this day and age, Melissa, so many people are cynical about politics. I'm never going to be able to return every call and return every email, but I do my best. I actually do all my own emails, and we try to respond to as an office every letter, and I return every phone call that's for me. And you do that because if somebody takes the time, you want to let them know that somebody on the other end is listening. If not, what happens? They turn off. They don't care. And we all have to contend with that problem, the sort of social malaise of political disinterest. It hurts all of us that people don't believe that politics matters, that their participation in politics matters. In my office, it really does. And that's not something that you can just say and be true. You have to live it every day. So it's an ongoing exercise. It's fun too.
I'm sure it is.
Some of the best food I ever get is when I'm out going to these neighborhood meetings. The little cannolis in Everett. You got that. I'm a food person, so this is what I live for.
What's your favorite food? People that are watching next time you're at a meeting.
I'll tell you, if you have Mike's Donuts in Everett, the pink donut with the pink coconut donut is the best ever. Now the Krispy Kreme is opening
I was going to say,
soon.
I don't know, because we have a producer here that lives and swears by Krispy Kremes. I know they're opening the end of June, so you might have some competition from what I understand.
I'm going to the opening. Krispy Kreme has good glazed donuts.
That's what I hear.
Honeydew's got some good donuts, I might add. One of my opponents last time actually was the owner of Honeydew Donuts.
Oh, okay.
So for a brief period, I wasn't going too much to Honeydew, but now I'm back. But it's, I know that sounds silly, but there's a wonderful, wonderful array. You can learn a lot by going to places. I do my office hours in coffee shops. I think it's very important to do it rather than a city hall or a place that people don't necessarily feel welcome.
Right.
Go to a place where people,
Well, because the coffee shop is everyone can relate to it. Everyone goes there sometimes.
And everybody's welcome. You're there because if you've got an issue, a concern, an idea. So I do mine I do mine at the neighborhood restaurant in Somerville. In Cambridge, I do it at Carberry's. Everett, we do it at well, I guess we've been doing it at Dempsey's. We're moving into the Dunkin' Donuts up by the high school.
Okay.
So it's very, very accessible places. That's important. So see, there is this sort of coffee and donuts theme to my life, whether it's myself or the constituents. You got to have a lot of it.
Okay. Next time we have you on the show, we'll have the pink coconut donut.
I'll bring them. I'll bring them.
Okay. Okay. Tell me about being state senator. You spent some time in the legislature as a state representative. What's been the difference? Aside from being, you're on a different committees, but what's been the difference for you emotionally, just moving to the different part of the building, a larger staff? What has been the differences?
You've hit on a few of them. And you're elected to represent folks. It's your job to do the intelligence, figure out, okay, if everybody in my district is concerned about the high cost of housing, well, what can we do about the high cost of housing? What are some solutions that are out there? And what can I do to move an affordable housing agenda, affordable home ownership agenda forward? So with that, one of the wonderful differences about the Senate is, you mentioned it, having staff, having people with me who can help research, help promote these ideas. You can be a lot more effective. I was, as a representative, I was never somebody who was in Tom Finneran's good graces. I always only had the one staff person I was statutorily required to have. They couldn't take that from me. I had a small little cubbyhole of an office. We did a lot of good work, but when you go from that to a staff of 7, and you're able to be present or have somebody present at meetings, you're able to think through in a thoughtful way, a considerate way, policy ideas, you really, I have a sense that I'm just a lot more thorough and effective now in the Senate, and that's very satisfying because you don't want to feel like what you're doing is half-baked.
There's just so many different concerns of the constituents. You have such a variety of constituents that you could never do it with one staff or just.
You have people in Cambridge and Somerville who care about affordable housing. They want to see more of it built. Then you go to Saugus, and people are very concerned about getting rid of Chapter 40B because they don't want any more affordable housing. And so, trying to really hear these different communities without misrepresenting yourself, without telling one people, talking on both sides of your mouth. You have to be consistent, but also, I think, thoughtful in the approach. And it's easier in the Senate because you've got more resources to work with. So that's a good thing from my perspective.
That's good. That's good. So you're enjoying your first year. And tell me about your chairman of public safety.
That's right. Public safety is
really
a big job, I'll say. We've got the Joint Committee on Public Safety, Tim Toomey, who shares much of my district, who's actually my own state representative, is the House chairman of public safety. He and I chair the committee. We do homeland security matters. We do issues dealing with fire, police, pedestrian issues, bicyclist issues. We do stuff on people who want to ride jet skis, people who want to ride this new Segway contraption, all these different bills. But we also do corrections, our correctional system, the registry of motor vehicles, a lot of these state agencies that come under the umbrella of the Executive Office of Public Safety. So it's actually a very stimulating set of bills that we hear. Soon we're going to be putting out a bill dealing with cell phones, for example. There's been a lot of concern about the safety of drivers and passengers who, when drivers are talking on cell phones, handheld cell phones. And the committee has been considering this, and we are going to be putting a bill out which prohibits handheld cell phones and encourages, obviously, because what would be left as being legal would be the headset phones or the kind of cell phones that you mount in your car and sort of do a speakerphone. Those are, frankly, a lot safer. And I think it's, again, this is an example of the very interesting kind of bills that come before us. We've put a lot of thought into it. I'm not somebody who's interested in banning all cell phones, because, I mean, let's be real, in this day and age, with traffic what it is, and people being as busy as they are, you need to use the phone.
Oh, and you can think of it on the flip side too. The cell phone is a safety concern as well. I mean, if you're running late or if your car breaks down or something, you hope that you have a cell phone to be able to call your loved ones and let them know that, that you need help.
But we want people to use them safely. It's a very interesting issue, but that's an example of the kind of bills that you can, that I have the pleasure of being able to be the chair of that committee and entertain and really be thoughtful about how we approach it, really making it safer to be a pedestrian or a bicyclist, drivers issues, motorcyclist issues, the range of things. Very interesting stuff.
Well, interesting, because I think when people think of Jarrett Barrios, they think of education or healthcare. How did you end up on public safety?
Good question. I don't know. I don't really know. My bills, the work I did as a representative, my campaign issues have been around education, investing in education for public school kids. I do a lot of work on healthcare access. I'm a big believer in universal healthcare coverage. I want to see affordable prescription drugs. And if you look at the bills that I filed when I was elected to the Senate, they deal with prescription drug coverage. They deal with more affordable housing. They deal with improving our investments in public education. There aren't too many bills that are public safety bills. And so it was a bit of a surprise that Senate President Travellini, who is a personal friend of mine and who I supported early on in his effort to become Senate President, really gave me a big responsibility as a freshman senator. And I'm honored to sort of have received that recognition. And because it's the committee which has the most, other than the Public Service Committee, which has all the retirement-related bills, all the individual retirement bills, and there's like 2,000 of those, the Public Safety Committee has more bills than any other committee. There's a lot of work.
Oh, definitely. I would definitely assume that it had.
And we have like 800 or 850 bills before the committee, and to look at every bill, to analyze it, and make a decision, okay, is this right for Massachusetts? Are we going to report this out? It's a great training as well as a lot of responsibility. And so I feel very blessed, lucky that the Senate President entrusted me with that. Very, very fortunate. And it's been a wonderful experience. It also is a rounding experience. It sort of rounds me out a little bit. In other words, it's important to know about this aspect of government, you know, and where government should stop, like what is too much government. I'm somebody who's always believed in the importance of privacy and respecting people's individual sort of rights, their ability to make decisions that affect them and only themselves. And public safety is where you see that. We have bills before us, the seatbelt law, the motorcycle helmet choice law, a lot of these bills where you want to think, well, where you ask the question, or what I try to ask the question, what's government's interest in this? I think you're an idiot if you don't put your seatbelt on, okay? But what's government's interest in telling people, and it's already against the law as a secondary enforcement. In other words, you can get a ticket or you can get a fine if a policeman pulls you over. But what is government's interest in making that a primary offense? Well, some people would say, well, you know, it saves lives. And while that's accurate, we have the lowest highway death rate in the country in Massachusetts. And further, we already have a law that says you have to wear it. So the argument that by making it illegal, more people are going to use it, well, that already applies. So what do we gain? What's government's interest? I think that we have to be very respectful, and this committee is teaching me to be very respectful of the individual's ability to make decisions that impact his or her own health. Now, when it comes to kids, when it comes to it's a different story. But where it's individuals and the law is about impacting you, and we're going to tell you as the state what you can and can't do, you have to be very careful about that. I believe it's taught me to be very cautious and respect government through restraint, where we choose not to go, where we choose not to mandate. It's been a very interesting education for me, Melissa.
Well, it sounds it. And I have a question that I think that a lot of our viewers would like to know. There may be someone watching at home that wants a law implemented, would be interested in having their state senator, or in you in that case, sponsor a bill. How does one go about that? If I have someone sitting at home and they feel very passionately about something,
Great
take
question.
me through the steps.
Great question. Well, first of all, every bill.
Because I think sometimes there's a notion that everyday citizens don't feel that, that their vote, that their vote matters, and that if they wanted something implemented, they couldn't. But that isn't the case. And
A lot of folks, for example, have bills that they hear about are out there, and they want their senator or their representative to support them. They'll get a letter from their union, or they'll hear from a neighbor about a particular issue. And those folks call, write. It's always better to say hello in person, but if you don't have the time to do that, a call is best, or a letter, a personal letter, not just a generic postcard. But if it's not that, if rather they have their own idea for a kind of law that they would like to see on the books, say you're driving down the street and somebody cuts you off, and the light changes and they're blocking the intersection and you can't get through, and you say to yourself, I want to pass a law that makes it illegal to block the box, to block the intersection, and give them a big fine if they do it. Okay? A colleague of mine, Steve Tolman, had a constituent call him up with that, and he actually filed the bill for the person. And just 2 weeks ago, appeared before our committee with that constituent and talked about it and why it was important. Any constituent can approach a senator or a rep and ask them to file the bill. It's important for folks to know that you have the statutory right in Massachusetts to file a bill by request, meaning you can go to that senator, and they don't even have to agree with you.
Right.
I had, as a representative, I represented all of, not all of Cambridge, but all of my district was within Cambridge. And I had one constituent, for example, who wanted me to file a bill that I didn't agree with at all. And I had a lot of problems with it, but I put my name on it, and I'm next to it by request, because it's his right to have that bill filed. Now, I didn't go and testify in favor of that bill. I didn't have to, because I didn't believe in it. And nobody can make you do it, and testify in favor of something if you don't believe in it. But it is any citizen's right to file a legislation. So know that, and if you're out there watching and you believe that you've got a good idea, know that it's your right to file it. Now, it's always better if you can persuade the senator or the representative to support your bill, because then they're behind it. So if you want to be sure that your bill gets a hearing, you make sure it's filed in a timely fashion the December before the session starts. After which time you can know eventually there'll be hearing scheduled. The hearing has to happen by that July. The committee that it gets assigned to, every bill gets assigned to a committee. Public Safety, or the Education Committee, or the Public Service Committee, or the Environmental Committee, or the Commerce and Labor Committee. There's a whole bunch of committees. And after it has its hearing, the committee will make a recommendation. We want to report this bill out favorably. We think it's a good idea. We want to report this bill out unfavorably. We don't think it's a good idea. And you want to make sure, if you have a bill and you have the support of your own state rep or state senator, that he or she works with you to talk to the committee, give them the information they need, so that you hopefully will get a favorable report out of the committee. After that, it's anybody's guess. It goes from there to the Ways and Means Committee, to a vote on the floor, and that one branch, either the House or the Senate, then it goes to the other branch. It's a wild ride. So.
Well, it seems very interesting. And you were talking earlier about, just while we're talking about bills, about different constituents calling your office and voicing their concerns or their support about different bills. What's in your mind, since you've been taken over as senator, what's the one issue that you've gotten so many calls on?
There have been a few issues.
Has there been one or two issues?
There have been a few issues, and some of it's local. Like, for example, in Everett, I receive a lot of calls. Education is a big issue in Everett, the public schools. So I've received lots of communication from parents concerned about the education cuts, and at the community partnerships level for the preschool kids, the Head Start kids, but also parents who have kids in the public schools, K to 12. In Somerville, there's been a very hot local issue dealing with a gang ordinance or an anti-gang ordinance. So I've received actually lots of calls against the proposed ordinance, and a couple in favor. That is an example. Cambridge, we always have our own issues in Cambridge. Cambridge is a special place. But across the board, I guess there have been three really big issues here that have spanned my district.
Right.
The biggest one has been the budget. The budget, and that we are short on revenues. Nobody wants the programs they care about and benefit from to be cut.
Right.
Right? The police and the fire don't want to see police and fire funding cut. The teachers and the students don't want to see education funding cut. None of us want to see some of these basic services that the state provides, services to the mentally retarded or the mentally ill, services that we do to help poor kids have health care coverage. But on the other hand, a lot of my constituents, sometimes the very same ones who say, don't cut my program, say, don't raise my taxes. The Boston Globe did a survey about 3 or 4 weeks ago and found that 69% of people didn't want to see taxes go up. And then the next question was, do you want to see core services cut in Massachusetts? 70% said no. This is the schizophrenia. People don't want to pay more taxes, but they don't want to see services cut. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Do you have a hard time, as someone who's out there talking to the public, do you have a hard time explaining to your constituents that sometimes what they hear about and what they read about in the headlines and what's getting cut and we're going to have to raise taxes and so forth, that sometimes that's just the headline and you have to really get down to the nitty-gritty and read over the whole thing, because sometimes you'll see something in the headlines that says, just using an example, education is going to be cut this much percent, and then when you actually read it down the nitty-gritty, it's not just that percent. It's probably 10% more, because if you take into consideration the different programs that are engulfed in education but that are separated and so forth, do you have a hard time explaining that? I mean, it must be challenging.
It's interesting because people are, on the one hand, people are convinced that there's a lot of waste out there. Governor Romney, and there is some waste out there, and Governor Romney has talked again and again. Unfortunately, he said that there was $2 billion in waste that he was going to cut, and that none of his cuts were affecting core services. The problem is, his budget didn't find $2 billion in cuts.
Right.
He was talking about things in his budget. I'll give you an example. They're counting on savings. They're going to move state offices out of leased buildings and into state-owned buildings. Okay, well, that sounds like a good idea. And he said, we're going to save $1 million on this particular agency moving out of a leased building and into a permanent building. Well, that sounds like a good idea. How much are you budgeting that it's going to cost you to move into that building? You're going to have to build out the building to make it suitable for an office, because they're talking about moving into these old armory buildings, some of which are like 50 years old, 80 years old. Oh, well, it'll cost about $5,000. So you're saying you're going to save $1 million, but this old building, which is leaky, which is not compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which it's just not real, is my point. It's a good headline, and people like to know that you're cutting fat, and I'm all for that. But when you look underneath the hood at that engine, it's not running too well right now. There's not a lot of veracity, and it's very frustrating, because you want to explain to folks, I want to see government work well. I don't want waste. Who does? Show me where it is and I'll cut it. When people call me, I say, help me point my way. Give you an example. The governor's trying to do a reorganization right now, reorganizing state government. His proposal to reorganize the Executive Office of Public Safety is a good program. I would vote for it if I could. The problem is, he's chosen to file that reorganization plan for public safety as one bill together with his reorganization of the judiciary, of higher education, of everything. And so if you've got a problem with one portion, because of the way he chose to do this, you've got to vote no, because it's a yes or no on the whole package. So I'm voting no on his package, even though I want to see a lot of good changes that his folks who've been working very hard have come up with. I think it's short-sighted of the governor to sort of push the issue in that way. I think that we could, the legislature and the governor work well together. If we weren't always, some of us are always kind of campaigning, pointing the finger at the other guy. Sometimes it's important to put that aside, and I hope the governor will do that and get to the business of governing with the legislature. That's what people really want to see, I think.
So it's interesting. So you feel, as a whole, the legislature works very good with the governor?
Well,
because I think that
I think the
people on
legislature,
the outside, they wouldn't necessarily think that.
well, certainly Romney has done a good job at complaining during the campaign that the governor, that the legislature doesn't want to work with him. Well, which is interesting because, for example, on his reorganization plan, the Senate has had, gosh, probably over 80 or 90 hours worth of hearings where we've invited the governor to come talk to us and testify and then ask questions. And then after analyzing what they presented, give them suggestions. You know, we hear what you're saying. This is what we think you might also want to do.
Right.
Some of his department heads went to the drawing board and rewrote their plans.
Oh, good.
So, the Secretary of Public Safety, Ed Flynn, did that. But some of them are like, forget it, you're Democrats and we're Republicans and we don't have to listen to you. And I think there's something lost in that, because whether you're Democrat or Republican, we all want to see government work better. We all want to work together.
As you've said, I mean, we are in some tough economic times and something needs to be done. Seems like you're having a great time as your first year as senator. What's been your most exciting day, or aside from the inauguration?
I guess my most exciting day was the first day of the budget. I gave my maiden speech in the House or the Senate. When you give your first speech, it's called maiden speech. I gave my speech on the subject of the MBTA and improving bus and subway and commuter rail service. And I had an amendment to the budget which was successful, so that if the MBTA wants to raise fares, we're tying certain service improvement requirements to that fare increase. And I don't want to see a fare increase, but it's fair if they're going to say they need to raise fares to keep up service, that we guarantee that service is going to be good service.
Yeah, so is there a fare increase? Because I know that when I've gotten my T-Pass, there hasn't been, but I thought I had heard there was.
It wouldn't go into effect until the earliest January. So we have time. We have time. And you'll see some of us fighting that. I don't want to see it, especially on the elderly. It's just not. It's not a fair way to go about it, I don't think, at this point, no pun intended. So this is wonderful. Thank you for having me on the show.
No, thank you.
I really
and
appreciate
you have to come back again and let us know all the great things you're doing.
Absolutely.
And your district has, go ahead and tell me all the names. It's,
Saugus, Revere, Chelsea, Everett, Charlestown, Cambridge, Somerville, Alston, and I guess Brighton, a little piece of Brighton, which maybe is your ninth one.
Okay, and you have a website as well.
I got a website and a State House office. My number at the State House, 617-722-1650. And
you have an open door policy.
And we do, actually. If you
I
walk
remember
by,
when I was there, you told me about how you had an open door
policy.
policy.
If you walk by, you'll see we have an open door. A lot of noise off the hall, but and then my website is www.barrios.org, BARRIOS.org.
Well, great.
And visit. You can send emails to me through that, and it's a good thing.
Great. Well, Senator, thank you for being on Middlesex Update.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
We'll see you again soon. And that's it for Middlesex Update. For my producer, Joe Fortunato, I'm Melissa Hurley. We'll see you soon. This is great.